It started with a glance. That's how most things do, don't they? A fleeting moment where your eyes meet someone else's and the world around you seems to pause. I was sitting in a corner of a dimly lit cafe on a rainy afternoon, nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. He walked in like he belonged there, like the rain outside was nothing more than an afterthought. His hair was damp, curls clinging to his forehead, and his dark coat hung loosely over broad shoulders. I didn't know his name then. All I knew was that something about him made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't explain. I'm James, by the way. At least that's what people call me. To the world, I'm just another face in the crowd. A graphic designer who spends too much time staring at screens and not enough time sleeping. But inside, I've always felt like I was living two lives. The one everyone sees and the one I keep hidden. Growing up in a small town where being different wasn't just frowned upon, but actively discouraged, I learned early on to tuck pieces of myself away. It wasn't safe to let them out, not when whispers could turn into stares, and stares could turn into something worse. The man at the cafe, he introduced himself as Daniel later that day. Wasn't from my world. Or maybe he was, but he carried himself differently. There was a quiet confidence in the way he moved, like he'd already fought battles I hadn't even imagined yet. We struck up a conversation almost accidentally, both of us reaching for the same book on a shelf near the counter. When our hands brushed, it wasn't electric or dramatic. It was subtle, like the first note of a song you don't realize you've been waiting to hear. We talked for hours that day, though neither of us said anything particularly profound. It was the kind of conversation where words feel secondary to the unspoken connection growing between two people. By the time we parted ways, exchanging numbers with hesitant smiles, I already knew this wasn't going to be like anything I'd experienced before. But here's the thing about falling for someone when the world isn't ready for it. You can't help how you feel, but you can control what you do about it. And so, we began navigating a relationship built on stolen moments and whispered promises, always mindful of the walls closing in around us. Living in shadows, Daniel and I fell into a rhythm quickly, though rhythm might be too generous a word for the careful dance we performed. Our dates were held in secret, quiet dinners at hole-in-the-wall restaurants tucked away from prying eyes, late-night walks through empty parks where shadows hid our intertwined fingers. Every touch, every shared laugh felt like a rebellion against a world that told us we shouldn't exist. At first, the secrecy was thrilling. There's something intoxicating about knowing you're doing something forbidden, something that makes your heart race every time you glance over your shoulder. But the thrill wore off faster than I expected, leaving behind a gnawing ache I couldn't ignore. I wanted to hold Daniel's hand without scanning the room for judgmental stares. I wanted to kiss him goodbye without worrying if someone was watching. Most of all, I wanted to stop feeling like I was living half a life. Daniel understood better than anyone. He grew up in a household where silence was survival, where questions went unanswered and emotions stayed buried. His family wasn't openly hostile. They weren't the type to shout slurs or slam doors, but their disapproval lingered in the spaces between words. Once, during a rare visit home, Daniel mentioned meeting someone new. His mother's response was polite but pointed. Just make sure it's serious this time. She didn't need to say the rest. The implication hung heavy in the air. For me, the pressure came less from family and more from the environment I lived in. My coworkers at the design firm were friendly enough, but conversations about relationships inevitably steered toward girlfriends and wives. I nodded along, laughing at jokes that left a bitter taste in my mouth, while Daniel remained an unspoken part of my life. The hardest part wasn't the lies, it was the distance they created. Over time, I noticed little cracks forming in our relationship. Moments of frustration would bubble to the surface during arguments, fueled by the resentment of having to hide who we were. One evening, after a particularly tense dinner where we'd barely spoken, Daniel finally broke the silence. "This isn't fair," he said, his voice low but steady. "We shouldn't have to live like this." "I know," I replied, though my tone lacked conviction. "But what choice do we have?" He looked at me then, his eyes searching mine for answers I didn't have. "There has to be another way." I want to believe him. I really did. But the truth was I didn't see one. The breaking point. The cracks widened until they became fractures, and eventually they threatened to shatter everything we had built. It happened on a Friday night, one of those evenings where the weight of the world feels heavier than usual. Daniel and I had planned to meet at a bar downtown, a place we thought was safe, tucked away in a neighborhood known for its inclusivity. But as we approached the entrance, we realized we weren't alone. A group of men stood nearby, their laughter carrying an edge that sent a chill down my spine. One of them called out as we passed, his voice dripping with venom. "Look at these two. Think they're brave enough to hold hands." I froze, my stomach dropping. Beside me, Daniel stiffened, his jaw tightening. Without a word, we turned and walked away, our strides quickening until we reached a quiet alleyway. Neither of us spoke for several minutes, the sound of our breathing filling the space between us. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "I'm tired of running, James. I'm tired of pretending." "So am I." I admitted, my voice trembling. "But what are we supposed to do? If we fight back, it only gets worse." "That's the problem," he shot back, his frustration spilling over. "We're so busy protecting ourselves that we're losing sight of why we're fighting in the first place. What's the point of loving each other if we can't even be honest about it?" His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but deep down, I knew he was right. The fear that had kept us hidden for so long was starting to suffocate us. That night, we returned to my apartment, the tension between us thick enough to cut with a knife. For the first time since we'd met, I wondered if we'd reach a point where the cost of staying together outweighed the joy of being with each other. Finding courage. The turning point came unexpectedly. A few weeks after the incident outside the bar, Daniel invited me to a community event hosted by a local LGBTQ+ advocacy group. I hesitated at first. The thought of stepping into a room full of strangers terrified me, but something in Daniel's eyes convinced me to go. The event was held in a modest community center, its walls adorned with colorful posters and banners celebrating love and acceptance. As we entered, I felt a strange mix of apprehension and relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't worried about hiding who I was. People greeted us warmly, their smiles genuine and welcoming. During the program, a young woman took the stage to share her story. She spoke about growing up in a conservative household, about the years she spent denying her identity because she feared rejection. Her voice cracked as she described coming out to her parents, the initial silence followed by tears, and ultimately reconciliation. By the time she finished, I was holding back tears of my own. Sitting beside me, Daniel reached for my hand, his grip firm and reassuring. In that moment, I realized we weren't alone. There were others like us, people who had faced the same fears and doubts, yet found the strength to stand tall. On the drive home, I turned to Daniel. "We can't keep living like this," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "If we want to survive, we have to start fighting, not just for ourselves, but for each other." He smiled, a flicker of hope lighting up his face. "Then let's do it. Together, building a new world." Our decision to stop hiding didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual process, filled with small acts of defiance that grew bolder with time. We started by introducing ourselves as partners to close friends, testing the waters before taking bigger steps. Each confession felt like shedding a layer of armor. exposing parts of ourselves we kept hidden for so long. Not everyone reacted the way we hoped. Some friends distanced themselves, uncomfortable with the change. Others surprised us with their support, offering words of encouragement that buoyed our spirits. At work, I came out to my boss during a performance review. Her response was measured but kind. "Thank you for trusting me. Your personal life doesn't affect your talent." The biggest challenge was facing Daniel's family. When we visited his hometown for the holidays, we decided to come clean. The conversation was awkward and strained, but it ended with a tentative understanding. His mother hugged me tightly before we left, whispering, "You make him happy. That's all that matters." Through it all, Daniel and I leaned on each other, drawing strength from the bond we'd worked so hard to protect. We joined advocacy groups, attended rallies, and volunteered at events aimed at creating safer spaces for others like us. Slowly but surely, we began to build a world where love didn't have to be a secret. Love beyond fear. Today, as I sit across from Daniel at the same cafe where we first met, I marvel at how far we've come. The journey hasn't been easy. There have been setbacks and heartaches, but every step has been worth it. Our love isn't defined by the challenges we've faced. It's defined by the courage we've found to face them together. Daniel catches my eye and smiles, the kind of smile that reminds me why I fell for him in the first place. "Remember the first time we came here?" he asks, his voice soft. "Of course," I reply, grinning. "You spilled coffee on your shirt 5 minutes after walking in." He laughs, shaking his head. "And you laughed so hard you nearly cried." We sit in comfortable silence for a while, watching the rain patter against the windows. Outside, the world is still imperfect, still riddled with prejudice and fear. But inside this little cafe, surrounded by the warmth of shared memories and unwavering love, I feel a sense of peace. Love isn't about waiting for the world to catch up. It's about finding the strength to move forward anyway. And in Daniel, I've found not just a partner, but a reason to believe that love can conquer even the deepest shadows.